So one thing that's kind of cool is we don't end up dealing with much pettiness in our lives. It, we hear about it kind of secondhand from people we know that like we've mentioned our grandma sometimes. Our grandma like pretty much everything she talks about is a petty thing. There are like extremes like that, and we hear it through the grapevine, so to speak, all over the place. But it's not something we interact with much. So we don't talk about it much because we don't need to. It's never a topic. So then when it does come up, then it's kind of actually an interesting topic because then we talk about it and it's like we don't have a context or a terminology or like a way that we understand it ourselves because we haven't really talked about it.
Well, I would even say we're not in it, so therefore it's we can see it.
Yeah.
Right, because if we were just in the pettiness, we wouldn't recognize something that we're not, or whatever.
Yeah. So like we can recognize it, but we're not in it, so it barely ever comes up. So then when we end up looking at it and want to talk about it, we don't have a terminology and a framework and
right,
like a bunch of examples. Like in almost any other topic, we could bring up an example, like cell phone things. Like there's no. 2 years ago we didn't have cell phones and now we do. Like there's no versions of those regarding topics that we aren't involved in because we only ever hear them elsewhere because we know like we've developed enough that we don't land in those things. And things like pettiness or just consoling and whatnot, that's not something that we have to do much, and that's not something we do much really. It's like very niche cases with the few people that might be specific and close to us, and that is it. So when we brought this up in the last ARN and we started talking about it a bit, and it was like we both were like, what's the thing that like we didn't know what the other one was thinking about it, or like how to talk about it with ourselves. Like we ended up discussing it quite a bit, and then we discussed it more after.
Yeah.
But it's not a thing that comes up often. So that's kind of a cool thing in itself. It's just like the context wasn't there for us to actually know what the other refers to when we talk